Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody. Let me tell you that we will be talking about several prophets today. We'll be talking about at least 4 prophets today. We'll be talking about Ilyas alayhi salam. We'll be talking about Alyasa alayhi salam. We'll be talking about Zulkifl alayhi salam. And then we'll be talking about Uzair alayhi salam. 4 prophets. Let's see who can tell those names back to me, the 4 names that I just gave. Ilyas, Alyasa,
Zulkifl.
and
Uzair alayhi salam.
Uzair alayhi salam. Very good. Okay. So we will start with Ilyas alayhi salam, which is basically who came before the other 3. So Ilyas alayhi salam, we don't know much about him in the Quran. We don't hear a lot of stories about Ilyas alayhi salam. In fact, his name is briefly mentioned. But in Hafiz ibn Kathir, who wrote the Qasasul Anbiya book, in that book, he brings a little bit of account of Ilyas alayhi salam. He said that Ilyas alayhi salam is one of the messengers. He was sent to the Arabian Peninsula, somewhere very close to Damascus in Syria. And the place where he was sent to, there was a very mean king, and they used to worship a goddess by the name of Al-Ba'al. And he started preaching about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people, so the people turned against him. And they started giving him very hard time. He finally approached the king, and he said to the king that I want you to worship only one God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and stop worshiping the goddess Al-Ba'al. So instead of believing in the teachings of Ilyas alayhi salam, the king ordered that Ilyas alayhi salam be killed. So Ilyas alayhi salam ran into the mountains. And there was one cave that went underground. So he went in that cave, and that he went underground, and he stayed there. Some people say that he stayed there till the king passed away or died. And that some people say it was 10 years time that he stayed in that cave. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the angels, provided him with food and all the other necessities of life in that cave. When the king died, the angel came to Ilyas alayhi salam and said, the other king have died and the new king has come in power. So Ilyas alayhi salam came out of the cave and went to the new king, and he preached the oneness of Allah to the new king, and the new king accepted Islam. And then most of the people in that kingdom accepted Islam, and those who did not accept Islam were left with very few numbers. And that's how Ilyas alayhi salam time was. And that's a little bit about him that comes in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya or Qasasul Anbiya. Both are the books of Hafiz ibn Kathir. Then I think I already told you guys about Hizqil alayhi salam. So I'm going to just briefly mention about him again. That Hizqil alayhi salam went across the people who died after they ran away from death. So they went to a place where they thought they will be saved, and they all died. The Hizqil, which in English is called Ezekiel, he went past those people and he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah, bring these people back to life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought all of those people back to life. We talked about that in greater detail before. Then I would like to move on to the next prophet, Alyasa, who that name also comes in the Quran. But again, we don't know much about Yasa. Again, the books that are written on the life of the prophets, like Hafiz ibn Kathir writes about him, and some other historians also write about him. It is believed that Yasa alayhi salam came after Ilyas alayhi salam, and he became the prophet for the people that Ilyas alayhi salam was prophet. And he started preaching them about Islam, and he was the one who enforced the laws of Islam to the people that were living there so that they can live their life accordingly. When Yasa alayhi salam grew very old and he needed somebody to take control of the people, so one day he gathered everybody and he said, I have 3 rules. Anybody who can follow these 3 rules will become the leader of the people. Rule number 1, you have to fast every day. Rule number 2, you should worship as much as possible at nighttime and maybe sleep a little bit during the daytime. Okay. Rule number 3, you cannot get mad. Very tough rules. He said, who wants to take the job? A young man stood up and said, I'm ready. And Alyasa was like, I don't know. And he walked away. Next day, he gathered everybody again, and he repeated the 3 rules again. Number 1, fast every day. Number 2, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as possible as nighttime, sleep a little during the day. And the 3rd one was, you cannot get mad, you cannot get angry. And the same man stood up and said, I am ready. And he in fact came forward and he said, I want to make a promise. I promise you that I will live my life in accordance with these 3 rules. Alyasa said, okay, you now rule the people. And he stepped out. And this young man that took control over, or this man who took control over, his name was Zulkifl. That's another name that comes in the Quran, Zulkifl. In couple places in the Quran, Zulkifl comes, once in Surah Al-Anbiya, and another one in Surah Saad, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a list of prophets, wa Ismaila wa Idritha wa Zulkifl. In another place, say, وَذْكُرْ إِسْمَاعِيلَ وَالْيَسَعَ وَذَلْكِفْلِ. So Yasa comes first and Zulkifl comes after. So in the same order they came. So anyway, Zulkifl started living his life in people. And whatever I'm about to tell you next, his story that doesn't come in the Quran, that is reported by a famous student of companions. His name was Mujahid. Imam Mujahid, he reports this whole story. And it is reported in the books of the Prophet stories. He says that Zulkifl was so good at his work that the shaitan said to his little shaitan, I want you to go and disturb him. The little shaitan went and did everything to disturb him, make him mad, but they failed. So the big shaitan, the Iblis, said, I will take care of this. You don't worry about it. So what he did, he started looking at his schedule. He said, okay, he's up all night. He fasts during the day. He sleeps a little during the day. How can I make him mad? Let me disturb his sleep. Let me not make him sleep. So Zulkifl went to his morning session with his people, came back in the afternoon, and he's about to take a nap. The only time he sleeps in a day. And then there is a knock on the door. Okay, people open the door. A very old man with a stick, walking slowly and slowly, approached Zulkifl and said, help me. I'm in a lot of trouble. He said, what's wrong with you? Oh, my people are so mean to me. They've taken everything away from me. And I will tell you my story, but it is very long. Let's sit down. And this was Iblis. He wanted to make sure that all his sleeping time passes away. So he started telling this long story that lasted for like 2 hours. And Zulkifl sat there patiently and listened to his story and told him, why don't you come in my evening session? I will make sure that the people who are troubling you, they are punished. He said, oh, I will come in the evening. Thank you very much for listening to my story. And when he left, Zulkifl's sleeping time was over and evening session time was there. So Zulkifl, without sleeping for 24 hours, went to this evening session. Waited for this old man to come, but he never came. Zulkifl said, maybe he got a little busy. Next day in the morning, he waited for the old man to come, did not come. Zulkifl is like, I don't know. Okay, let me go to bed so I can sleep. I haven't slept for 2 days. The moment he started going to the sleep, knock on the door. The old man came and said, oh my God, I'm in a lot of trouble. Zulkifl said, why didn't you come the night before? Why didn't you come in the morning? He said, you know what? As soon as you started your session, I was about to approach you, but my enemies came to me and said, don't go to Zulkifl. We will do everything that you will ask. And the moment your session was over, they said, we will not going to do anything. So he was lying, right? So Zulkifl said, okay, don't worry. Come tonight or tomorrow morning. I will take care of your stuff. He said, but still listen to my story. And he went on and on for another hour or so. And then Zulkifl's time was like his sleeping time was halfway through. He didn't felt like sleeping. His evening session started and he went to the evening session. Again, the old man did not come. Next day morning, the old man did not come. And the third day, Zulkifl ordered everybody in the household, nobody should disturb me. I'm sleeping. I haven't slept for 2 days. I need to sleep. So do not let anybody come. It doesn't matter how urgent it is. So Zulkifl went to sleep. Around that time, knock on the gate. And the servant says from inside, who is it? He said, I'm an old man. I've come here to meet Zulkifl. He said, but Zulkifl cannot meet anybody right now. He's taking the rest. He said, but Zulkifl asked me to come. And the servant said, nope, nobody is allowed. And then there was no voice. That's it. There was a dead drop silence at the gate. And the servant turned around and the old man was standing in the courtyard. He's like, how did you get in here? He said, don't worry. And he started walking towards the door where Zulkifl is sleeping, and he knocks on the door. Wake up, wake up. And Zulkifl is like, who is here? I told you guys, don't disturb me. And the servants are like, we stopped this old man, but magically he appeared. And Zulkifl looked at the gate. The gate was locked. And he looked at this old man and said, are you Iblis? He said, oh, you failed me again. I've been trying for 3 days to make you mad. And then the Iblis disappeared. And he said, I failed. You have kept your promise. The Zulkifl, his story comes in books of tafsir, like Ruh al-Ma'ani and some of the other books, that Shaitan failed to make him mad. Now think about it, you guys, we get mad so easy. Little things make us mad. So, and we don't even live up to our promises. We tell our parents, oh, I'm not going to do it again. And then we end up doing it again. So these are the stories to learn from, that Shaitan is trying to make us do things that we should not be doing. So anyway, Zulkifl's time was over and he passed away a natural death in his times. Now, some people think that Zulkifl was actually Ezekiel, but actually Ezekiel is a different prophet and Zulkifl is a different prophet. So don't mix those two people together. So we talked about Ilyas alayhi salam, we talked about Yasa alayhi salam, and we talked about Zulkifl alayhi salam. Now we'll talk about Uzair alayhi salam. Uzair alayhi salam's name is mentioned in the Quran only once, and that is in Surah Tawbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Jewish people at some point in time started calling Uzair alayhi salam the son of God. وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ عُزَيْرٌ ابْنُ اللَّهِ. And why did they do that? And of course, we should not associate anybody with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he neither is father nor son. As you learn in Surah Al-Ikhlas, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. So there is no relationship of anybody with Allah. And let's learn a little bit about Uzair alayhi salam so that you can understand why his life is a little bit different from everybody else. So Uzair alayhi salam, before he was born, there was a mighty Persian king that attacked the Jewish people in Jerusalem, and destroyed their entire kingdom. and then took them as prisoners, war prisoners, and settled them in Tel Aviv. Initially took some of them back, settled some of them in Tel Aviv. So Uzair alayhi salam was born in those times, and he started preaching his people. That area in which they were put, that eventually they were freed, but after 70 years, the Torah, their holy book, was all the versions of holy, or all holy books that they had were burned. So they had no Torah. They had no way to know what is Torah. They even forgot their language. They even forgot their customs. They were strictly prohibited from practicing their religion, speaking their language, or doing anything that they were doing before. They were prohibited. They were asked not to read their books. So it was all forgotten. Uzair alayhi salam was given this miracle that he memorized the whole Torah from his dad. And then some, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught him. His dad actually buried a copy of Torah under a tree before they were captured by the army of Persian army. Anyway, so Uzair alayhi salam, in those times when they were freed, was walking past one of the destroyed cities of Jerusalem, or the kingdom of Israel. And he sat by the tree. He had food with him. His donkey was next to him on which he was riding. And he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, this city was so living 70 years ago, and it is all destroyed. Will anybody ever live here? Will there still be any city here in the future? And he was wondering about that, and he sat by the tree and he slept. He slept. Then when he woke up, an angel appeared and said, Uzair, do you know how long you slept? He said, I slept probably in the morning, and it is maybe evening time, so I might have slept for half a day. He said, no, you slept for 100 years. He said, what? He said, yes. Look at your food. He said, my food is still warm. What do you mean? My bread is warm. I have my juice, which is perfectly fine. This should have been gone if I slept for 100 years. And the angel said, look at your donkey. He looked around and the donkey disappeared. It was in dust. And angel said, look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does to this donkey. And right in front of his eyes, the donkey started assembling together like skeleton, on which the meat came, the muscles, the skin, and in no time, the donkey was standing there alive. So the angel said, look, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring the city back to life. Look around. And then he started looking around, and in 100 years, the city was again running like it was before, as if nothing happened here. He's like, Subhanallah, I slept for 100 years. And this miracle happened where in the same place he was sleeping for 100 years. He was 40 years old at that time. When he woke up, he was still 40 years old. And his donkey died. Now he started running to his village, and he's like, oh my God, my house, my children, right? I want to meet my family. The whole village changed into a town. He's going around street to street. He can't find his house. Finally, he looked at a house. He's like, I think my house was here. And then he knocked on the door. A very old woman who was blind. She couldn't even properly walk. She was sitting there. And he said, do you know about Uzair, O old woman? She said, I am the only one alive in the town who know about Uzair. People forgot about Uzair. How do you know about Uzair? He said, I am Uzair. And she's like, no way. He said, yes, I am Uzair. Said, remember, I was 40 years? She said, I was 20 when you disappeared. I am now 120 years old. And you know what? I can't even see. I'm blind. I can't walk without a stick. I'm old woman. But Uzair had one miracle. Whenever he would make dua, his dua would be accepted. You should make a dua for me so that I could get my eyesight back, and then I will be able to confirm if you are Uzair or not. So Uzair alayhi salam raised his hands in dua and said, "Oh Allah, give this old woman her eyesight back." The moment he said Ameen, she could see again. And she's like, "Oh my God, you are Uzair." And then Uzair alayhi salam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make her stand on her own feet. He lifted her up and she could stand on her own feet. And then she said, "Uzair, come with me. I will introduce you to your family." So Uzair alayhi salam followed her to a place which was like a town hall where all the elders would meet. And he said, "Uzair, that is your son. He's 108 years old." And all those other men sitting around him, the older men, because they looked older than Uzair, his grandkids were like in their 70s and 80s. And here is Uzair alayhi salam in his 40s, his 40-year-old. He said, "Look at those are your grandkids. And the other people that you see somewhere around your age, those are your great grandkids." And then they're like, "How should we believe in you, old woman, that he is our great grandfather?" And the son said, "There is one way." The son of Uzair alayhi salam said, "There is only one way that you can prove that you are Uzair." And he said, "What is it?" He said, "Uzair alayhi salam was the only one alive who memorized the Torah by heart. If you can recite to us the Torah by heart, we will believe that you are Uzair alayhi salam." Right at that time, two little lights came down from the sky, and they entered, looks like they entered into the body of Uzair alayhi salam, like a miracle that everybody could see. And the moment those entered in his body, he started reciting to them the Torah, word by word, page by page, from start till the finish. And then they brought their scribes and they started writing the Torah down again so that they can preserve it, because they lost the Torah. And why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him the miracle of the lights? Because one little thing happened before that. Uzair alayhi salam said to his children, "Let me show you where the Torah is buried." So he took them to that tree where his father, Uzair alayhi salam's father, buried the Torah, and he digged at the roots of the tree. Because remember one thing, if you are going someplace and you want to hide some treasure or something important, in the good old days, they would hide it under the roots of the tree or by the tree roots. The reason is because it is easy to find. You can identify trees. Second of all, things in the roots of the tree, they don't move around. So that's why they would always hide by the tree roots. So anyway, so he dig it up there. He found a copy of Torah. But what happened in 150 years or so, or 120 years, everything was gone. It was just a bunch of pages with nothing on it. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this miracle that he recited the entire book to them. And then he stayed with them till he passed away. So that is the story of Uzair alayhi salam. I told you guys 2 weeks ago that we'll go in the story of Zakaria alayhi salam as well. But, there were some other prophets that I want to talk about today, like Ilyas alayhi salam, Alyasa, Zulkifl, and then we talked about Uzair alayhi salam. So maybe like next time we'll talk about Zakaria alayhi salam, and maybe there are a couple other prophets that I want to talk about before Zakaria alayhi salam with you guys. Like we have Daniel alayhi salam, we have Armiya alayhi salam, we have Shia alayhi salam. So we'll also talk about them before we talk about Zakaria alayhi salam. But that's for the next week. And then as we talk about Zakaria alayhi salam, we'll also talk about Yahya alayhi salam. So for the next couple weeks, we'll be busy with these prophets, and then we will go to Isa alayhi salam. So let me come out of this to the gallery mode, and then we'll look at your questions.
Well, I have a question. When are we gonna talk about Prophet Muhammad and alayhi salam and sallallahu alayhi salam, and then when are we gonna talk about Lut alayhi salam?
We already talked about Lut alayhi salam. Which other prophets did you say?
Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
That is after Isa.
That is after Isa.
Okay.
Okay.
What about Prophet Musa alayhi salam?
We already talked about.
We already talked about Prophet Alyasa.
I
And
never remember.
And then all
all
of those recordings are available. So all of the recordings are available on YouTube. So in that WhatsApp group, the recording links are available. So you can go to that WhatsApp group, and then you can go to the playlist, and that's where you can find all the past recordings. So everything that we have talked about in last 10 months, because we started this in January, all the prophets from Adam alayhi salam till 2 weeks ago, they're all recordings are there. Okay, let's go to Alyasa next. Alyasa, go ahead.
After all the prophets, what are we going to do?
Well, we have some other Islamic stories from the Quran that we will talk about also. And when we start talking about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is the most detailed account that we'll have. So probably, I think we'll be talking about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam probably for a year.
Really?
Inshallah.
Yes, there's so much. You know what? I recorded an adult Siratun Nabi on the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I recorded 450 episodes.
I have
What?
another question.
Yes, and then still there are more episodes to be done, which I will do in the future, but at least at 450 episodes. But I will not going to go in that much detail with you guys as I did for the grown-ups, but I will still be going in a little bit more detail than probably you have heard in the past.
Okay.
Okay, but we're not going to do 450 episodes with you guys. Okay, go ahead, Faranaz. Okay. Okay, so that's all for today, everybody. Then, assalamu alaikum.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Hafiz.